till now we have done the NSTEMI, and we have discussed the causes and the management. We have learned that whenever the patient has blockage up to 75%, it will the patient will be asymptomatic, and the blockage is greater than 75%, then the patient will have symptoms. It will present in the spectrum. On one side, the patient is symptomatic, then unstable angina or NSTEMI, and STEMI. When the patient has 100% blockage, then the patient will present with STEMI. So, when the patient has unstable angina or NSTEMI, we perform some risk assessment. Suppose the patient presents with a chest pain, and in the emergency department, you have done ECG, and on the ECG, you have noticed ST depressions, and you have done the cardiac markers, that is troponin and CKMB, they are elevated. Then you have labeled this patient as NSTEMI. Then you will, for the further management, you will do some risk assessment of the patient. They are for each risk you will assign the patient with a 1, and then you will calculate if the patient has age greater than 65, greater than 3 risk factors for the coronary artery disease. Okay, when the patient has CKD, that's the important point. If the patient has CKD and diabetes mellitus, then you will treat the patient as acute coronary syndrome patient, because these are the most important risk factors for the coronary artery disease, unless proven otherwise. So, non-coronary artery disease patient with the greater than 50% of the stenosis, use of aspirin in the past 7 days will have risk factor 1, greater than 2 inguinal episodes within the preceding 24 hours, elevated serum cardiac markers, that is tropi and ST deviation greater than 0.5 millimeter on admission on ECG. So, if the risk, you have calculated the risk, and it is between 0 and 2. You will label the patient as low risk, and you will do stress test. For immediate risk, that is or intermediate risk or high risk, 3 to 4 or 5 to 7 risk, then you will do coronary angiography and stent implantation within 24 hours. You will not do coronary angio uh, uh, if the patient is hemodynamically unstable, new patient presents with heart failure or new mitral regurgitation, if the patient has chest pain, recurrent chest pain or ventricular arrhythmia. It means if the patient is unstable, then you will immediately do coronary angiography and stent implantation. Normally, we don't do coronary angiography immediately. We do ECG and cardiac markers, and then we'll give the patient an IV drip of nitrates, beta blockers, that is metoprolol, heparin, and aspirin, and then we will wait and watch and do coronary angiography within 24 hours. We will not do angiography immediately. Okay, it's a question: what pharmaceutical treatment should be avoided with MI that presents with congestive heart failure or bradycardia? So, some questions occur in the exam. So it is important that you should recognize what they are asking. It is the important question that most paper setters ask patient with the presents with MI and he has congestive heart failure and bradycardia. It means that the patient will have hypertension, and we don't want the patient to further have the hypertension, so we will avoid beta blockers. Normally, we give the patient beta blockers. What is the recommended reperfusion therapy for NSTEMI patient that presents within the 12 hours of symptom onset but cannot undergo PCI, that is per coronary intervention or coronary angiography? Angiography or PCI is recommended within the 90 minutes. If the patient can't undergo, then we will do fibrinolysis. But PCI is superior to fibrinolysis. What is the most important risk factor for the survival in the patient in and out of hospital setting? Cardiac arrest. Suppose if the patient is in the parking lot of the hospital and he presents with a chest pain and collapse, the important determinant that the patient will survive is the time to resuscitation. That is, we do CPR and prompt rhythm analysis by attaching monitor, and if the patient has ventricular tachycardia with decreased with hypertension or ventricular fibrillation, then we will defib the patient. What is the initial management of hypertension in the patient with the right ventricular MI that has low or normal JVP, jocular venous pressure? We have already discussed that when the patient has right ventricular MI, then the right ventricular can't pump enough blood to the right atrium in the right ventricle, and the patient will have hypertension. So, important thing to realize is that the patient will have already low uh, preload. So we avoid to decrease the preload. We will avoid nitrates, that is the contraindication to right ventricular MI. So we will give the things or the that will increase the preload, that is we will give the fluids that will ultimately increase the preload and improve the survival of the patient. Marked hypertension is the characteristic feature of right ventricular MI. When the patient presents with in the ER with a chest pain, we do 12 lead ECG to determine the changes in the leads. If the inferior leads are 2, 3 and AVF, and lateral leads are 1 and AVL, and interior leads are V1 to V6, V5 and V6 are on the lateral side. So if the ECG changes in the are in V1 to V6, then we label the patient as interior wall MI, and it is due to left ascend, anterior descending artery. If the ST elevation are in the 2 lead 2, 3 and AVF, they are present they are on the inferior side. So we will label the patient as anterior wall MI, and it is due to right coronary artery or left circumflex artery blockage. The ST changes are on posterior wall MI. The patient will have ST depression on the interior leads, but if we place the leads, posterior leads, those are V7 to V9. On those leads, the patient will have ST elevation, and posterior wall MI is due to left circumflex artery blockage or right coronary artery blockage. Lateral wall MI. What are lateral leads? Lateral leads are 1 and AVL. The patient will have ST elevation on STEMI or ST depression on STEMI on those leads. And it is due to left circumflex artery or diagonal artery blockage. Right ventricular MI is due to right coronary artery blockage. The patient will have ST elevation in V4 to V6R. Okay, left main artery blockage. The patient will present with the ST elevation or ST changes in lead AVR. Posterior inferior STEMI. Posterior inferior STEMI means ST elevation in the posterior and inferior leads. Or in other words, the patient has infarction in the posterior and inferior surface. They are most commonly due to right coronary artery occlusion and left circumflex artery occlusion. The patient will have ST changes in the 2-3 AVF, ST depression in the V1 and V2, reciprocal ST depression, and 2:1 AV blockage. AV blockage is due to the right coronary artery blockage because it supplies AV node. The patient will present with the bradycardia. Okay, now comparison of left ventricular and right ventricular MI. Left ventricular MI, when the patient will present with infarction in the left ventricle, then the left ventricle will can't pump blood to the body, then the blood will pull back. So the patient will present with the pulmonary edema and will have S3 and S4. On ECG, ischemic changes on the anterior, lateral, or inferior leads. Hemodynamic findings are increased left ventricular and right ventricular preload because the left ventricle will not pump enough blood to the. So the right ventricular and left ventricular preload will increase, and the patient will have hypertension. And the patient will have has hypertension, then systemic vascular resistance increase to compensate for the decreased blood pressure. So SVR will increase. Management is by fluid restriction, preload and afterload reduction, and reperfusion therapy. Of course, it is myocardial infarction. You have to perfuse right ventricular MI. Right ventricular MI is the infarction of right ventricular. The patient will not able to pump the blood to the left atrium and left ventricle. So the patient will have clear lungs, but just JVP will increase because the blood will pull back or goes back. The patient will present with marked hypertension. On ECG, the patient will have inferior ischemic changes, ST elevation in AVR, and bradyarrhythmias because inferior wall or right wall MI is commonly due to the right coronary artery blockage, and right coronary artery supplies AV node. Hemodynamic findings are increased right ventricular preload and decreased left ventricular preload because the right ventricle will not be able to pump the blood to the left ventricle, and systemic vascular resistance will increase due to hypertension. Management is by fluid restriction, avoid preload reduction, so we don't give nitrate to right ventricular MI patient, instead we give fluids. Reperfusion therapy. Sinus bradycardia and AV block are common and typically transient complications of inferior wall MI. Okay, if the patient present with right ventricular MI, and the patient is hemodynamically unstable and has bradycardia. We don't give fluid immediately. First, we will give IV atropine to increase the heart rate of the patient, and then we will give fluids or do other things or do other intervention. Cardiac pacing is the treatment of choice in patient with a persistent symptomatic bradycardia. Okay, the optimal management of myocardial infarction. So the patient has MI and you have done the intervention, that is PCI. Now, for the lifelong management, you will give the patient some drugs. You will give the patient some drugs, that is, those are dual antiplatelet therapy, that is low dose aspirin and P2Y12 inhibitor, that is clopidogrel. Okay, clopidogrel is most commonly given for first 12 months after MI, but aspirin is given lifelong. Uh, why clopidogrel is given only for, or most commonly for, initial 1 year, because when the stent is implanted, the metal surface is exposed, and the patient is more prone to thrombus formation. So we give the dual platelet therapy, but after 1 year, there is intimal hyperplasia of the patient on endothelium. Endothelium grows on a surface, and the metal surface isn't exposed. So although the risk of thrombus formation is there, but it is less. So after 1 year, we can uh, stop clopidogrel. Okay, and we will give the patient high intensity statins that will stabilize atherosclerotic plaques and reduce recurrent MI formation. So it is the important question in scenarios or in the boards. What are the drugs? They will ask you if the patient had MI, and which of the following drugs will decrease the risk of remodeling of the heart. So it is important that you should remember all the drugs that we give post MI to the patient post MI. Beta blockers. Beta blockers are given to basically reduces the myocardial oxygen demand. It decreases the heart rate, and myocardial oxygen demand is decreased and decreases arrhythmia risk. ACE inhibitors, we give all the patients to decrease the left ventricular ejection fraction. And mineralocorticoid antagonist, that is spironolactone, it also reduces left ventricular ejection fraction with symptoms or comorbid diabetes, and it inhibits post-MI remodeling. Okay, after post-MI, the patient, when they ask you drugs, one of the option is furosemide or antidiuretics. So know it that diuretics are have no role in playing in inhibiting the post-MI remodeling. So three drugs, that is beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, and spironolactone, they inhibit the post-MI remodeling. Beta blockers induce short-term morbidity, recurrent symptoms or infarction, and improve long-term survival in the patient with broad MI or left ventricular systolic dysfunction, and are an integral part of pharmacotherapy for uh, secondary prevention of cardiovascular events following MI. Use of NSAIDs increases the risk of ACS, that is acute coronary syndrome, and MI. Why it increases? Uh, you know that thromboxane uh, increases platelet aggregation by inhibiting the COX-1 enzyme, and prostacyclin 1 also it inhibits the platelet aggregation. So the degree that which NSAID increases or decreases the platelet aggregation depends on the ratio to which enzyme they inhibit the most.